Man of Steel. Is Superman back? In the word, yes. And it's been so long since we actually had a good Superman movie. Superman 2, in my opinion, well, I think in everybody's opinion, for the most part, is the last good movie we've seen from Superman. Now, one thing I gotta say about the Man of Steel is that it is far superior than Bryan Singer's version of Superman in Superman Returns, because that one was so boring. This one, like I said before, is far superior, and the action picks up. The action picks up on a whole different level. Now, Man of Steel is the origin story of Superman. It's a retelling of the origin story from the original movie that came out in 1978, I believe. Now, is it on par with the original movie that came out in the late 70s? Yes. Is it better than the original one that came out in the late 70s? In my opinion, it's a dead heat, but I don't think it's superior to the original one. Now, one thing I gotta say, the way Zack Snyder directed this film is that the visuals in this movie is spectacular, especially the look of Krypton. Because in the original movie, Krypton looked like the North Pole. It was just plain and barren. In this movie, it was so visually stunning. It had more of a presence than the original one, and the visual effects when it came to this movie was spectacular, bar none. This movie stars a boatload of solid actors. You got Diane Lane, Lawrence Fishburne, Kevin Costner, and Amy Adams. Now, this movie is partly produced by Christopher Nolan. And watching this movie, you kind of see the sprinkles or the footprints or the handprints of Christopher Nolan producing this movie, because it kind of somewhat reminds me of a little bit of Batman Begins, the way he told the origin story. So, like I said before, this movie is good. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, but it does have flaws when it comes to a true origin story. And one of the reasons is that the way they told the origin story, like I said before, you can see the handprints of Christopher Nolan, and the way they did it in Batman Begins. He tried to copy off Batman Begins and how they went back and forth with the aspects of his life. Now, Batman Begins did it perfectly. With this movie, when it came to the origin story, it kind of like overly used the back and forth of his origin story. It was like really tedious. I would have liked it to been more chronologically ordered. Now, with them going back and forth when it came to the origin story, I thought it was fine for what it was, but I kind of felt that they overly did it with the back and forth of telling his story as him gaining his powers and learning how to use his powers. I thought that was really overly used when it came to that. Now, I did like the aspect of that, how just because you have powers, you have to use it responsibly, and that's why I did like that theme with it. Like I said before, you have a lot of good solid actors. The other flaw this movie actually did have is secondary characters were underdeveloped. Now, in Batman Begins, you got a lot of good characters that were fleshed out perfectly. In this movie, you got a decent amount of characters that were not developed properly, like especially Lois Lane, Perry White, and some of his parents. That's why I thought it could have picked up more. Now, the only person I think that was a standout when it came to the secondary characters was Kevin Costner, because I consider him like an Alfred to Superman / Clark Kent, because he was like a guiding light for him of how he can control his powers as a young person and up to his adulthood. Now, Russell Crowe, I actually forgot Russell Crowe's in this movie, and he did a good job, but I always thought that Kevin Costner was a standout. Another flaw what I have with this movie is that the fact that sometimes the score felt misplaced in certain scenes. Now, I love the score by Hans Zimmer, and it made me forget about the score from the original movie back in the late 70s. But sometimes I thought that the score was misplaced sometimes. And I thought that it really didn't fit the scene that it's actually going for. Now, towards the end of the movie, it fit well. But at the beginning, I thought the score could have been a lot better or placed betterly than what it actually was. Now, let's talk about the main star, Henry Cavill. His performance was good. Now, is he ready to take over the mantle of Superman, taking it away from Christopher Reeve? I want to say give him another movie, because it's very hard for me just to give up the mantle to him, because I thought that he had good charisma, but I'm not ready to give him up to Christopher Reeve, because Christopher Reeve, he is Superman. I think give him a few more movies, and I think he can take that mantle over. But for now, the title still holds to Christopher Reeve. Now, speaking of the title character of Superman, I did like the fact that he had conflict with his powers and being Superman, because in the original movie, when he first came out as Superman, everybody was just welcomed him. But in this movie, when something is strange to somebody, they don't automatically accept it. Well, that's what I liked about this movie, because the character had more conflict than the original one. It showed the depthness of that character, because just because you're Superman and want to save the world, you're not easily accepted like it was in the first movie in 1978. Now, also, this movie also stars Michael Shannon as General Zod. Now, is he better than Terence Stamp as General Zod in the second movie? In my opinion, no. He did a good job, and the villain had more of a motivation than General Zod in the second one, the second original one. Terence Stamp still gave a better performance as General Zod, in my opinion. But Michael Shannon was good in it. Despite all those flaws as a Superman movie, this is a good thrill ride a minute. If I had to sum it up in one word, Man of Steel is spectacular. Now, do I rate it over the original Superman movie? No. And here's why. As far as story-wise, the one in 1978 is better. Action-wise, this is better. Even though I know in 1978 the action scenes were a little choppy. Man of Steel is kind of like on par with the original version in 1978, but I still enjoy Man of Steel. And Zack Snyder has a good hand on Superman, and I definitely want to see him do another Superman movie, which I think he signed on for Man of Steel too. I think it's definitely in good hands because the way he's taking the character. I think if Christopher Nolan is still producing and reins Zack Snyder in, I think Superman is in good hands. Man of Steel has a so-so story, but the action is far superior than any action we've seen in a Superman movie. So with that being said, Man of Steel gets 4.5 out of 5 stars. Even though it has its flaws, I still really enjoyed it. So if you like this review, please rate, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, Movie Nation.